Story 1. I walked out after waiting an hour. Now I'm the bad guy. I, 28F, have a friend who I've known for over 10 years. She's fun, kind, and loyal, but she's always late. I'm not talking about a casual 5 or 10 minutes. I mean 30 minutes to an hour every single time we make plans. At first, I brush it off. I get that life happens. But after a while, it started feeling like she just didn't care about my time. I've had to wait at restaurants alone, missed movie previews, and once even sat through most of a concert opener by myself because she showed up 45 minutes late. She always apologizes with excuses like traffic, forgetting something at home, or oversleeping, but it's every time. Last week was the last straw. We planned a dinner to celebrate a big promotion I got at work. I made a reservation at a nice restaurant and even showed up a bit late myself, knowing her track record. Still, she didn't arrive until an hour after the reservation time, and by then the restaurant had given away our table. I was so embarrassed and frustrated that I just left. Later, she called me, upset that I ditched her. I finally snapped and told her that I'm tired of her being late and how it feels like she doesn't respect me or my time. She got defensive, saying that she can't help it and that I'm overreacting because she always shows up eventually. Now a few of our mutual friends are telling me I was too harsh and that her lateness is just part of who she is. They say I should accept it because nobody's perfect, but I don't think it's fair to expect me to just suck it up every time. So, AITA for getting mad and walking out? Story 2. My brother wrecked his laptop and called me selfish for refusing to share mine. I, 22F, have a laptop I bought with my own money for school and work. It's my lifeline. I use it for everything from studying to freelance gigs that help pay my bills. My younger brother, 18M, recently broke his laptop by spilling soda all over it while gaming. He didn't have a warranty or insurance, and now he can't do his schoolwork. He asked to borrow mine until he can save up for a replacement, but I said no. I don't trust him to take care of it, especially after what happened to his. He promised he'd be extra careful and even suggested using it only in front of me. Still, I'm worried something could happen, and I can't afford to replace mine if he damages it. My parents think I'm being selfish and say I should help him out since it's for school. My brother is upset and says I don't care about his education. I feel bad, but I can't shake the fear of losing my laptop. AITA? Story 3. I canceled last minute on my best friend's birthday trip. Am I selfish or justified? My 27F best friend planned a weekend getaway to celebrate her birthday. She had been talking about it for months, and I was genuinely excited to go. The plan was to drive out to a cozy cabin in the mountains with a group of 6 friends, enjoy nature, and have a fun time celebrating her. I RSVP'd right away and even pitched in $150 for my share of the cabin rental. She planned everything meticulously, activities, food, and even cute matching pajamas for all of us. It was going to be a great trip. However, a few days before the trip, I started feeling anxious. Work has been super stressful lately, and I've been struggling to keep up with everything. I hadn't really talked about it with her because I didn't want to ruin her vibe, but by the night before the trip, I realized I couldn't go. I was overwhelmed, exhausted, and the thought of being on all weekend in a group setting just made me want to cry. I texted her late at night and told her I couldn't make it. I explained that I wasn't feeling well mentally and needed the weekend to rest. She didn't reply right away, but in the morning, she sent a message saying she was disappointed and upset. She pointed out that I'd known about this trip for months and that canceling at the last minute threw off the vibe for everyone, especially since I was the one driving one of the cars. Now they had to scramble to fit everyone in fewer cars, and a couple of the activities she planned weren't going to work without me. Some of the other friends of the group text chimed in, saying they understood, but it would have been better if I'd given more notice. She, however, hasn't really spoken to me since, and I feel awful. I offered to pay my share of the canceled plans, but she said it wasn't about the money. It was about me letting her down. So I IDA for canceling on my friend's birthday trip last minute because I needed a mental health break. Story 4. ITA for not expressing my discomfort when my partner's ex ended up being our server at dinner. Last night, after our Christmas gift exchange, my partner suggested we go to a popular restaurant near my house. They had previously mentioned that their ex worked there, but I trusted their judgment and didn't think much of it. Once we entered the restaurant, I noticed a shift in my partner's energy. Before arriving, we'd been affectionate and joking around, but as soon as we walked in, they became quieter and avoided making eye contact with me. They waved and said hi to their ex, who then ended up being our server. During the interactions with their ex, my partner didn't introduce me, and I felt boxed out as their ex stood close to me, facing only my partner and giving compliments and kindness. This made me feel invisible and uncomfortable. After we already ordered, my partner asked if I was okay, and if there was anything they could do. I said I was uncomfortable, but didn't push to leave because I thought it might make things more awkward. I waited for just a simple introduction, but it didn't happen. Later in the meal, their ex asked if we wanted separate checks, which reinforced my feeling that the situation didn't look like a date. After dinner, I explained how I felt, and my partner got upset. They said I should have been open earlier and not expected them to read my mind. I told them that their shift in energy and lack of an introduction made me feel sidelined. They explained they were caught off guard by seeing their ex and don't think about them ever, so they were not expecting this and didn't want to make the situation uncomfortable for their ex by introducing me because my partner broke up with them. However, this made me feel hidden and as though my feelings were less important than their ex's comfort. My partner felt I was ignoring their discomfort and did not offer them the benefit of the doubt. I felt like my hurt was being sidelined in the conversation and that it was unfair for me to be the one to express discomfort, and I shouldn't have been brought into that situation. We ended the conversation with them saying they needed time to process. ITA for not expressing my needs earlier and letting the situation linger until after dinner. Story 5. ITA for telling my friend her joke wasn't funny. My best friend, Rachel, has always been the life of the party. She's funny, outgoing, and knows how to get a laugh out of everyone. I admire that about her, but sometimes her jokes go too far. Last weekend, a group of us got together for a game night at my apartment. Everything was going great until Rachel made a joke about my job. I work in retail, and while it's not glamorous, it pays the bills while I figure out my career goals. Rachel said something like, "You think with all the time you spend folding clothes, you'd have learned how to dress better by now." Everyone laughed, including me, because I didn't want to make it awkward. But it hurt more than I care to admit. Later, when it was just the two of us, I told Rachel that her comment bothered me and asked her not to make jokes about my job again. Rachel rolled her eyes and said I was being too sensitive. She argued that everyone knows she jokes around and it wasn't meant to hurt me. She even said, "If I can't joke with you, what's the point of being friends?" I told her that joking is fine, but there's a line, and she crossed it. She got defensive and accused me of overreacting. Now she's barely speaking to me, and a few of our mutual friends have hinted that I made a big deal out of nothing. I feel like I had a right to speak up, but maybe I could have handled it better. So IDA for telling my friend her joke wasn't funny. Story 6. IDA for refusing to let my sister borrow my rare book collection. I, 26F, am a huge book enthusiast. Over the years, I've built a collection of rare and signed editions, including some books that are no longer in print. They mean a lot to me, not just because of their monetary value, but because of the time and effort it took to find them. My sister, 29F, recently got into reading, which I think is amazing. However, she's not the most careful person with her belongings. She spilled coffee on library books, dog-eared pages, and once left a book out in the rain. She's also notorious for not returning things she borrows. Last week, she came over and noticed my collection. She asked if she could borrow a few of my rare books, particularly one signed by a favorite author of hers. I told her no, explaining how much these books mean to me and my concerns about their safety. I even offered to help her find affordable editions of the same books online. She got upset and accused me of being selfish and gatekeeping literature. She went on about how I should want to share the joy of books with her and that I'm prioritizing things over our relationship. My parents have sided with her, saying it's just a book and that I'm being unreasonable. They think I should at least let her borrow one to show goodwill. Now I'm wondering if I'm being too protective or if my concerns are valid. Ida? Story 7. ITA for telling my mail if she keeps rearranging my kitchen, she can get a hotel room. I, 29F, am married to a wonderful man, 30M, who's also the brother of my best friend. Our heights are very different, with me being 6 feet 6 inches and him being 5 feet 7 inches. All of his family are on the short side, and it led to some adjustments in our living arrangements at first, but we found what worked for us. We realized early on that it was easier for him to use a step stool to reach what he needed in the kitchen than for me to constantly be crouching to get what I need, as that gets painful quickly for me. This was fine until my ML came to stay with us 2 weeks ago. Her roof needs repairs. My husband and I have a spare room while my best friend doesn't, so it was only logical she come stay with us. She has constantly been moving things about in the kitchen, lowering items as she doesn't want to use the step stool, which isn't anything to do with her age or fearing she'll fall, she just doesn't want to. She keeps harping on about how it's ridiculous, everything is so high up, and it's rude for guests. My husband has repeatedly shut her down, stating my comfort matters more than theoretical guests, and asked her not to move things. She lets it go for a day, then things are moved again. I've expressed frustration to my husband about this, and the final straw came today when I went to make myself a coffee and could not find my coffee mugs anywhere. It took me 5 minutes to find them in my kitchen, and I found them in the lower cabinet that I had to kneel to get them out of. I was angry and snappish at this as my back had hurt for getting my mug, and I told her if she couldn't stop herself from rearranging my kitchen, she could get a hotel room, as I've had enough of her entitlement. This led to a lot of blustering and some tears that she was just trying to make it make more sense and how this is her son's home and how it's just a little reorganization and that they shouldn't all suffer just because I'm tall. She then also began to say how I'm heartless to expect her to stay in a hotel over the holidays. My husband was clearly uncomfortable at this and didn't want his mother upset, but he told her that it wasn't just his home, but mine too, and if she wouldn't respect my comfort and happiness, then she would have to leave. She has went into the guest room, and I can hear her crying still. My husband is clearly getting anxious and upset over this, but he's not backing down, and I feel awful that my snapping led to him feeling like this. Maybe I should have just put up with it or been more gentle about how I dealt with it. I honestly don't care that she's upset, which may make me sound heartless, but I hate that my husband is feeling this way. Story 8. ITA for snapping at my mom for telling people I'm gay. My 20M sister, 14, was reading a book yesterday when she asked me, "What does a Greek god look like?" I asked her why she's asking me that, and she showed me a passage saying a guy has the features of a Greek god. So I told her, muscular and handsome. I noticed my mom giving me a weird look and asked her if something's wrong. She said nothing. Later asked me if I like my best friend, 20M, because he's tall and muscular. I was taken aback. As it turns out, she had always assumed he and I are gay, which is not the case. I quickly told her we're not gays, but she didn't believe me, saying the way we behave around each other leaves no other possible interpretation. So I told her she should stop trying to interpret and see things that are not there. She said, okay, before telling me, she told her friends that I am gay, but haven't come out to her yet, and that she was worried about me keeping it bottled up inside. I snapped at her for it. I have nothing against gays, but I don't want them to think I'm one when I'm not, since it'll only lead to awkwardness. Not to mention one of them has a daughter I have a crush on and might ask out. She said she only told them because she was worried about me and wanted some advice on what to do. Story 9. AITA for making a scene at the airport after a guy cut the entire security line. So this happened yesterday, and I'm still fuming. I, 33F, was at the airport for an international flight. I got there super early because I hate the stress of rushing through security. The line was long but moving steadily. Everyone was waiting patiently, except for one guy. Out of nowhere, this man, probably mid-40s, wearing a suit and carrying a fancy briefcase, breezed past the entire line and tried to cut in right at the front. The TSA agent briefly questioned him, but the guy said something about being late for a very important meeting. And just like that, they let him through. I couldn't believe it. I said loudly enough for others to hear, "Oh, so the rest of us just wasted our time lining up, huh?" A few people murmured in agreement, but most stayed quiet. The TSA agent glared at me and said, "He's got priority clearance." Here's the thing, this guy didn't have priority clearance. I overheard him earlier while we were waiting to remove our shoes, saying he missed his first flight because he was at the bar too long. He was bragging about it. I wasn't going to let this slide. I raised my voice and said, "Priority clearance doesn't cover cutting the line because you were drinking, does it?" The guy turned around, rolled his eyes, and said, "Some of us have places to be, unlike you." That set me off. I told him it was rude to assume his time was more valuable than everyone else's and that if he wanted to skip the line, he should plan his day better. The TSA agent told me to calm down and move along, but by now, people behind me were chiming in, backing me up. The guy eventually walked off without another word, but now I feel like maybe I overreacted. My partner, who was with me, thinks I should have just let it go because it's not worth the hassle. A few people clapped when I said my piece, but others looked annoyed that I held up the line for a mini-drama. So, AITA for calling him out and making a scene? Or should I have just swallowed my pride and let it slide? Story 10. AITA for not letting my roommate borrow my car anymore? So here's the deal. I, 27M, have a car that I've worked really hard to maintain. It's not brand new or flashy, just a decent little Honda Civic that gets me from point A to point B. I live with my roommate, Jake, 25M, who doesn't have a car of his own. He claims he doesn't need one because we live in a city with decent public transportation. A few months ago, Jake asked if he could borrow my car to run some errands. He said it would be quick, so I agreed. When he brought it back, everything seemed fine, and I didn't think much of it. But then it started becoming a regular thing. "Hey, can I take the car to get groceries?" Or "I need to pick up a friend from the airport." At first, I was okay with it as long as he covered gas when he used it. But then I noticed some small issues. Once, he brought it back with a fast food smell that lingered for days. Another time, he left it with the gas tank almost empty. But the final straw was last week. He took the car to grab something quick and ended up being gone for 6 hours. When I texted him asking where he was, he said he decided to drive out of town to visit his girlfriend an hour away. To make things worse, when he finally got back, there was a noticeable scratch on the bumper. Jake shrugged it off and said, "Oh, I think someone must have dinged it in the parking lot. No big deal, right?" I told him I wasn't comfortable letting him use the car anymore unless it was a serious emergency. He got super defensive, calling me uptight and accusing me of holding it over his head because he doesn't own a car. He said I'm being selfish and that friends help each other out. I don't want to be a jerk, but this is my car, and I feel like he's taking advantage. Now the atmosphere in the apartment is super tense, and he keeps making passive-aggressive comments like, "Guess I'll just walk for 2 hours to get groceries." AITA for refusing to let him borrow my car again. Story 11. Am I the asshole for refusing to share my inheritance with my step-siblings? I, 26F, recently inherited a significant amount of money from my late mother. She passed away earlier this year after a long illness, and it's been a devastating loss for me. My mom was a single parent for most of my life, and we were incredibly close. She worked hard as a nurse to make sure I had everything I needed. About 5 years ago, my mom married John, who has 3 kids. I was already an adult when they got married, so while I was happy for my mom, I never really bonded with John or his children. They were pleasant enough, but we never blended into a cohesive family. They have their own mom, who is very much in their lives, and they've always relied on her and John financially. When my mom passed, her will explicitly left everything to me, her life insurance policy, savings, and property. In her will, she wrote that John and his kids were not included because she trusted John to handle his own finances and because she wanted her money to be used to secure my future. She even talked to me about this before her passing and made it clear that she wanted me to use the inheritance to pay off my student loans. After the will was read, John and his kids were furious. John argued that since my mom had been a part of their family, her money should benefit them as well. John's children said it wasn't fair because they had all loved my mom and considered her a stepmother and accused me of being greedy. The thing is, my mom always went out of her way to include John's kids while she was alive. She'd buy them gifts on their birthdays and for Christmas, help them with small expenses, and treated them kindly. But they never treated her like a mom. They were polite but distant. On family vacations, they'd gravitate toward John or their own mom and leave my mom as an afterthought. I've told them no. This was my mom's money, and she was clear about her wishes. She worked her entire life to give me a good future, and I feel it's my responsibility to honor her intentions. John and his kids don't seem to understand this, though. They've been calling me selfish, and John's side of the family has joined in. They've sent me texts saying I'm ruining the family by refusing to share. My dad and my fiancé are both on my side. They say the money is mine, and I shouldn't feel pressured to give it away, especially since it was my mom's explicit wish. But I can't help feeling guilty. I know my mom wouldn't want me to feel bad, but the constant guilt-tripping from John and his family is wearing me down. So, AITA for refusing to share my inheritance with my step-siblings? Should I reconsider, or am I right to stand my ground? Story 12. AITA for asking my friend to pay me back for covering her rent for 3 months? I, 26F, have a close friend, 27F, who's been struggling financially this year. About 6 months ago, she lost her job unexpectedly and was in a tough spot. She asked if I could help her out with her rent for a while until she found work. I agreed because Sarah and I have been friends for years, and I genuinely wanted to help. Over 3 months, I covered her rent, which totaled about $3,000. She promised to pay me back once she was back on her feet. The thing is, I'm not exactly well off myself. I work a retail job and live paycheck to paycheck, barely saving anything after covering my own bills. Helping Sarah put me in a tough spot, and I had to dip into my small emergency fund to make it work. I figured it would be worth it since she promised to pay me back. Sarah recently found a new job and started earning again. I waited a couple of months before bringing up the money she owed me, trying to give her time to get stable. When I finally asked, she seemed surprised and said she thought it was a gift, not a loan. I told her that I wouldn't have minded helping her, but $3,000 is a lot of money for me, and I was clear when we agreed that she'd pay me back. She said she doesn't have that kind of money right now because she's saving for a vacation and other necessities. When I pushed the issue, she got defensive and said I was being greedy and insensitive, knowing she had a hard year. She's now refusing to talk to me, and some mutual friends think I'm in the wrong for pressuring her while I'm also struggling financially. AITA for asking her to pay me back when I'm not doing great myself. Story 12. Title: Am I a bad person for secretly resenting my boyfriend? I've been with my boyfriend for almost 2 years, and I don't know how to feel anymore. He's not a bad person. He's kind, funny, and gets along well with my friends and family. But lately, I've been feeling so much resentment toward him, and it's eating me alive. It started small. He never helps around the house unless I ask, and even then, it feels like he's doing it begrudgingly. He spends hours gaming or scrolling on his phone, while I'm juggling work, errands, and keeping our place livable. When I try to talk to him about how overwhelmed I feel, he just brushes it off with, "You're better at it than me anyway." But it's not just the chores. I feel like we're on completely different paths. I'm ambitious and working toward big goals, but he's just stagnant. He's fine coasting through life, while I feel like I'm constantly striving for more. It's starting to make me resent him, and I hate feeling this way. The thing is, I still care about him, but I don't know if I love him anymore. Every time he says, "I love you," I feel like a fraud saying it back. I don't know if this is something we can fix, or if it's a sign that we're just not right for each other anymore. I'm scared to bring it up because I don't want to hurt him, but I also don't know how much longer I can keep pretending everything is okay. Has anyone else been through this? How do I even start a conversation like this without breaking him? Story 13. ITA for refusing to change my travel plans after my friends wanted a more luxurious trip. I, 29F, recently planned a trip to Thailand with a group of friends. I've been dreaming about visiting Southeast Asia for years and decided it was finally time to go. I did a lot of research, found affordable accommodation, and planned a pretty basic but fun itinerary. Think exploring temples, street food, hiking, and spending time on beautiful but more budget-friendly beaches. I'm not someone who enjoys extravagant vacations, so I aim for a more modest experience while still getting to enjoy the culture and sights. The issue started when my friends, all in their late 20s/early 30s, saw the accommodations and activities I had planned. They started complaining that it wasn't luxurious enough for them, and they wanted to upgrade everything. They suggested we stay at fancier resorts, go to more upscale restaurants, and spend more on guided tours and private experiences. I politely explained that I was sticking to a budget, and that was the type of trip I was comfortable with, but they got increasingly vocal about how they weren't going to enjoy the trip if we didn't upgrade. At first, I tried to compromise by looking into a couple of more expensive options, but when I saw how much the costs were increasing, I realized it was way out of my price range. I told them that if they wanted to splurge, they could book those activities separately, but I would be sticking to my original plan. That didn't go over well. One of my friends called me cheap, another said I was being too controlling about the trip, and they all started saying I wasn't being considerate of their preferences. I honestly thought I was being reasonable by sticking to a plan that worked for my budget, but now I'm starting to feel like maybe I should have been more flexible. AITA for refusing to change the trip to accommodate their idea of luxury travel. Story 14. ITA for telling my mom about my dad's weaponized incompetence. I, 18F, do all the shopping in the house. It's been my job since I was like 12. My dad hates going shopping, so I never ask him. For Christmas, I am cooking. I had a very specific grocery list because I'm making things that I haven't made before. My parents didn't let me go shopping yesterday, so I had to go today. My dad said he would grab certain things to help me out, and I said okay. I gave him a list. I really needed chicken thighs and blocks of cheese. He came home with ground chicken and only mozzarella cheese that's pre-shredded. I told my mom about it because this isn't the first time he's done this, and it's made me upset. She got mad at me for being upset with him because we never ask him for anything. I've asked him multiple times to get things for me, and he either gets the wrong thing, doesn't get anything I need, or complains. For example, I wanted to go shopping before my wisdom tooth removal. I had a list of things with pictures because he said he could grab it and certain brands make me sick. He got 4/20th things on the list and said everything else was not necessary. He went with my money and said that. Now my mom's upset with me because she is in debt from always buying stuff for the house. But the whole reason that's happened is because of my dad's weaponized incompetence. So am I the asshole for being mad at me, Dad, and telling my mom? TLDR, Dad got the wrong things at the store after getting a list with pictures. I'm mad because it has happened multiple times. And Mom is mad because I told her. Story 15. ITA for telling people I'm not having fun when they ask and I'm genuinely not. This one is general. I am a guy who, when I don't enjoy something, I'll tell you I don't. But if I commit to something, I'll see it through to the end without complaining. This comes to a head where I was on vacation with my older brother in Arizona who wanted to do a lot of nature hikes. Nature hikes are fine. I don't mind them, but I do dislike walking up large hills. Walking downhill is the easiest thing ever. It's like being nature's passenger princess. You just put your foot forward and let gravity do all the work. Walking uphill, conversely, is very draining and leaves me sweaty. I don't make a point to complain about something when I do it, so when I was walking uphill, despite not liking it much, I held basic conversation with my brother. As we were heading back down, he asked me if I was having fun, and I said no. Not because of any fault of my brother, I just didn't find the activity fun. Not even bad, just satisfactory. Later, when he was driving me to the airport for my flight home, he told me, if I ask you if you're having fun, don't say no. I understand that it can be demoralizing to hear someone's not having fun, but I don't like it when people ask for my opinion and get upset when I give my honest answer. If I'm not having fun, I'll just say I'm not having fun. Story 16. ITA for telling my mom to tell her boyfriend to stop telling me what to do. I, 20F, have been starting to get really annoyed by my mom's new boyfriend. At first he was cool, but now I feel as though he is overstepping. My parents got divorced only a year and a half ago, and my mom and her boyfriend have been together for roughly 6 months now. Of course, I am happy that she found someone new, but his actions are bothering me. It started after she told him about an argument we had, and he randomly told me to be graceful to those around me. During my teenage years, my mom and I would argue a lot, but it was nothing out of the normal mother-teenage-daughter conflicts. I'll admit I do still have a bit of resentment towards her for some of the things that she has done/said, but I am working on it with therapy. We are good for the most part, but sometimes she will have an attitude and I will use attitude back at her, which she probably told him and prompted him to say that. Either way, though, I think it is none of his business the arguments I go through with my mom. The next thing that bothered me was on Thanksgiving when I was upset because of an argument with my BF and needed some extra time to collect myself before going down to the table. My mom called me over the phone to come, and I didn't go immediately, but I said give me a few more minutes. It was then when I got a knock at the door and I said, "Who is it? Please don't come in right now," and her BF burst through the door anyway and kept telling me to come downstairs right now. That rubbed me the wrong way completely, and I was even more upset and hated being downstairs after that. The last thing that happened to him was this evening when we went out to eat for Christmas Eve, and we had all finished eating, so I slipped away to the bathroom to check my phone. My BF was asking me about something important, so I continued replying when I got back to the table. It wasn't even 1 minute of me still being on my phone when he told me to put it away. I said, "I will," and continued to text because I was just aggravated. My parents raised me to have manners and they never banned me from using my phone completely at the table, just not excessively, which I knew not to do anyways, and that was not what I was doing. The rest of the time, I just stayed quiet and couldn't wait to go home. When I got home, I told her to tell him to stop telling me what to do, to which she replied, "You tell him," and she seemed mad. Story 17. AITA for telling my coworker why customers might not like her. I work at a restaurant as a server. One of my coworkers moved up here from Georgia for college and started working here a few months ago. She constantly lays on the southern charm thing thick. She calls everyone honey and sweetie and all of that. She also tends to chit-chat with people instead of just letting them eat after bringing them their food or drinks. It's also kind of obvious that a lot of them don't want to really talk to her. They give one-word answers and she just barrels forward and talks at them. Management has told her off more than once for this. About 2 weeks ago, she was upset because a customer yelled at her and said, "Don't call me that," when she called her honey, and she complains that she's not getting as many tips as the other servers. She says it's because she has a southern accent and customers think she's stupid, but I don't think that's the case. She asked me for advice, and I said it's because she takes so long to bring things out and wastes time trying to make small talk. I also said that the excessive pet names sound kind of condescending, and they aren't really something you would call a stranger here. She told me that she wasn't going to start being rude to customers because she would make even less money. I told her it's not being rude, it's just how things work here, and it's rude to other customers she's supposed to be serving when she spends all her time trying to make small talk instead of doing her job and calling them weird things. Now she's mad and has been avoiding me. Maybe I could have been gentler when trying to explain why people complain about her, but I was also really stressed because it's Christmas season and so much is going on. AITA. Story 18. IDA for parking next to a car that parked on the line? I'm blown away by this opinion and need to crowdsource validation. Tonight, I drove CVS to pick up popcorn for a Christmas movie with my kids. I parked in the closet open parking spot to the door. When I get out, I noticed the car next to mine was very close. I had to squeeze through a cracked door just to get out. Note, I made sure I did not touch their car with my door at all. I double-checked to see if I parked poorly, and I was right in the middle of the spot. However, the car next to me was on the line. Not over the line, but the wheels were touching the line. For context, I have a Chevy Bolt, a small EV car. The other car was a mid-size SUV, like a Toyota RAV4. I didn't think much of it. My kids were waiting, and I wanted to get in and get out. When I come back, the owner of the other car is checking for possible dings, presumably from my car door opening. They were about to get in when they saw me walk up to. Then we had this interaction. Them, "Is this your car?" Me, "Yes, it is." Them, "Why did you park next to me when there are so many other spots?" There were other open spots in the row behind our cars. Me, "I just parked in the closest spot to the store." Them, "You're so close to my car when you could have parked anywhere else." Me, "I'm parked in the middle of the spot and you're on the line." Them, "If I ding your car with my door, it's more your fault than mine." Me, "Your car is on the line." Them, "That's not really relevant," says as she gets in her car. Am I the asshole here? I never would have thought to check if the cars on the other side of me had parked well before I pulled in. TLDR, I parked next to someone whose car was on the line, making our cars very close. They said it's my fault if their door dings mine since I could have parked elsewhere. AITA? Story 19. ITA for walking out on Christmas? I am not a very social person, and the holidays can be very taxing for me. My extended family is in town from all over the world, and for the past month they've all been here. It's the biggest gathering in recent memory. Every day there is a big group activity or meal with family. Myself and my husband work full-time at a very stressful job, and we're also experiencing financial issues. So we were expected to join family functions while continuing to work, and we only had a few days off for Christmas. I try to set boundaries, but honestly it's difficult because I'm the oldest of my siblings and I feel a lot of obligations and pressure. My husband has been on and off reacting strangely. Sometimes he's in a terrible mood and doesn't want to talk or engage. When he's like this, he is impatient with me and doesn't want to hear me vent about family or anything I might be upset about. Other times he seems okay. I know he's missing his own family. They live in another country, and we made the choice not to fly to see them this Christmas because of finances. Last night was Christmas Eve, and the entire family is meant to unwrap gifts together. It's a tradition. On the way there, I take my younger cousins and husband to get ice cream. I get some for my mother too. When we get to the house, my mother immediately asks where the rest of the ice cream is and blames me for not getting enough for the entire party, although she knew I was going to the ice cream shop and hadn't clearly asked me to. She just expects me to know these things. Everyone starts avoiding me, which is generally what happens when my mother and I get like this. For them, it's less drama with me being the scapegoat because it happens so often anyway. I'm wandering around and my husband is in another room entirely talking to my younger cousin and brother. He says to me that what my mother did was messed up, but there's so many people there and I'm feeling socially anxious and tapped out so I can't properly respond. I say I'm feeling overwhelmed and I want to go somewhere quiet with him. I want to say more, but my husband is in a strange mood again and doesn't wait to let me finish. He decides to leave me instead and play a game with a cousin across the room. I'm feeling totally isolated at this point. By the time my husband comes back, I'm at my breaking point and I just need to leave the house. I tell him that and walk out without him, and I actually go home. Feeling alone in a huge social gathering where everyone is avoiding me and where I've been publicly shamed is the worst feeling to me. Eventually I go back, but it's hours later and everyone acts like nothing happened except for my husband. He says I crossed the line and he's not talking to me. AITA? Story 20. Would I BTA for redonating Christmas gifts given to my child? New account because I haven't been on here in a while and cannot remember my old login info. We usually give my kid about 5 Christmas gifts in each relative household. Grandparents and /uncle, etc. will give 1 to 2 gifts to my kid each. A somewhat more distant relative, not related by blood, don't see them very often, sent 5 larger toy gifts and a few books and smaller gifts for my child. This was a big surprise, and I was a little overwhelmed because it's already a task each year to make room for the new toys, and this just felt excessive. This relative also did the same for another child in the family that she barely knows. I don't believe she has met the child because this relative is connected to the family through my brother. I, of course, appreciate so much my child being considered and the sweet thought. I found out after opening all the gifts that the gifts this person has given to the children in our family, as well as a bunch of other children in her family, are from a local toy drive for children whose parents cannot afford much for Christmas. This relative is probably more on the low-income side, but has a steady job. We are more upper middle class. Definitely not the target recipient for toys donated to the drive. I would not have felt too bad if she took 1 toy from the drive to give to our kid, but it really just feels like so much. I feel terrible that maybe these toys could have gone to a kid who needed them. It sounds like the relative took about 40-ish toys for kids she knows. I'm thinking of redonating them in the morning if I can find a place to do so, but worry this is ungrateful and rude. But I also just feel bad keeping them when we don't need them and others might. Whipped if I did. Edit to update. I think the number was closer to 25 items after hearing more from others. Thank you all for input. Some would like me to address her, but my brother is closer to her age and closer to her, so I think I will just mention it to him and let him address it if he sees fit. The lady recently lost her cat in an accident, so I would really struggle to say anything myself. Story 21. AITA for asking to stay 1 more hour at my mom's on Christmas from my dad? Hey everyone, so for a bit of context, I, 18F, have level 2 autism and don't really handle being yelled at particularly, well plus I tend to avoid conflict. This also happens every Christmas except for last one where he got COVID. My parents, 53F and 51M, are also divorced and have been divorced since I was in year 3, and they haven't been on speaking terms since. I've also been living with my mom without swapping weeks since about 2021. It was my decision after a large argument I got into with my dad after my at the time doctor labeled him as being abusive. So on to the story. About a week before Christmas, my dad called me up and insisted on picking me up at 12 p.m., which I've always tended to hate since I never get enough time to talk to my mom's side of the family. I asked him if I could have more time, like an hour or two, which was when he started screaming at me over the phone. During this conversation, he mainly calls me stupid for not understanding street smarts and how my mom is clearly drugged up and convincing her ex to be her drug dealer. My mom's ex was going to be at the party because my half-sister's children being there. He proceeded to dismiss the time one of my doctors called him abusive before I eventually gave up and gave in to the idea of being picked up 12 p.m., despite being obviously upset about it. I was crying because of him yelling at me. After that, we left it at there until Christmas Eve, where I asked my mom if she could try convincing him, which although she agreed, it didn't help. So moving to today, I woke up and had a missed call from my dad, so I called him back up where we said Merry Christmas to each other before I asked about having more time at mom's again. He got angry at this and proceeded to scream at me, but I stood my ground and insisted on 1 to 2 p.m. and not going at 12 p.m. This resulted in him deciding to cancel the Christmas plans I had with him because he makes my life miserable. I didn't say this. I said not seeing the rest of my mom for more than 30 minutes sours my mood for the rest of the day, before giving me the silent treatment hanging up on me. This was after I said that the earliest I'm going is 1 p.m. before I don't care about how he thinks it's unfair that mom gets more hours over the year because I'm not even covering my child support anymore, and he's technically getting more of the day regardless on Christmas. Honestly, I'm just a bit confused over this whole situation. I still want to see him as I had presents I handmade for him, which probably won't even be gift. I don't even really care about my presents. I just want to spend more time with some of my family that I only usually see only on Christmas. I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong anymore or what to think about this. If I am in the wrong, I will apologize, but I'm pretty sure that he's not bluffing about canceling Christmas knowing him. So Reddit, AITA. Also, apologies for bad formatting. I'm on mobile. Story 22. AITA for refusing to give up my front row spot at a concert to someone claiming to be disabled. A couple of weeks ago, I traveled to another country to see an artist I've been a fan of for 6 years. This was a once-in-a-lifetime experience for me, and I'd been waiting months for it. I sacrificed a lot financially and mentally to make it happen. Since it was my first and probably only time seeing them, I went all out. I bought GA tickets and arrived at the queue at 5 a.m., even though the doors wouldn't open until 6:30 to 7 p.m. in freezing cold weather. I waited all day, hungry, cold, and dehydrated, but it was worth it because when the doors opened, I secured a front row barricade spot right up against the stage. This was my dream spot. Then a guy behind me tapped me on the shoulder and told me he was disabled. He said the venue was supposed to let disabled attendees in early, but they hadn't. He asked me to give him my spot at the barricade. Here's the thing. I know this venue is very accommodating for disabled attendees. I actually have friends with disabilities who've gone to shows here, and the staff always ensures they get to the front row safely during a designated time frame before it gets too crowded. Now, I'm a very short person, 155 cm/51 inch, and this guy was extremely tall, easily over 5.5. If I gave him my spot, I wouldn't be able to see anything at all because he would completely block my view. I honestly would have been willing to move if he wasn't so tall, or if I could still see from the second row. However, in this case, I knew I'd lose the view I had waited more than 10 hours for. I tried to compromise. I pointed out that the right side of the barricade was still open and suggested he go there. Since he's so tall, he'd still have a great view and could hold onto the rail for support. However, he refused, saying the view wasn't as good as where I was. While we were talking, that section filled up, and he became more insistent. He said he'd have a hard time if he couldn't take my spot. At this point, I got frustrated and explained. 1. If his disability was that serious, he should be in the accessible section, which is specifically designed for attendees with disabilities. 2. If he insisted on being in the standing section, he should have brought a support aid, like a cane. I'd seen someone nearby with one. 3. If he spoke to security, they could escort him to the front row disabled seating, which has a fantastic view and is much more accommodating. After hearing this, he called me an asshole, told me to get fucked, and left. I feel like he just wanted my spot and wasn't being truthful. The venue offers several options for disabled attendees, and I tried to direct him to alternatives. I feel bad for saying no, but I don't think it was fair for him to ask me to sacrifice my entire experience. So, AITA? Edit. Regarding the man's height, after everyone pointed it out, I've realized I indeed made a mistake. I don't live in a country that uses the metric system, and I should have double-checked my conversion instead of estimating from memory. I meant to say he was over 170 centimeters, probably around 175 to 180. Story 23. AITA, my roommate won't let me leave the flat because he doesn't want to move. I have been roommates with my close friend for about 3 months now. We have been very close friends before, but living together brought some conflicts, and things are now kind of shaky between us. Last month, he made a girlfriend. She has been coming over for 3 to 4 nights a week since then. They have been staying up until 5 a.m. mostly and make all kinds of noises. I'm not a heavy sleeper and have trouble with sleeping. Also, it has now become like living with 3 people in the flat, which is not ideal for me. When I brought this to his attention, he basically said I'm jealous of them and their happiness. Now, not gonna lie, I have not been in a good space recently and suffering from loneliness. I can also say seeing my friend and his girlfriend kind of brings out my insecurities and brings down my mood. A few nights ago, I brought this to the attention of my friend. I basically said I'm not in a good mental space right now, and being around them makes me feel miserable. I mentioned I'm thinking of moving out. He may need to find another flatmate. The thing is, we are staying in this flat thanks to a guarantor I found. Without me, he will need to find another guarantor, and that is not possible for him. He will basically have to move. We have planned for a 1-year lease, signed for 6 months term, which will renew in March. This is the time I told him I'm planning to leave. He lashed out at me for acting out of jealousy and breaking the contact we made. He said he helps me so much, and he really did, but I have been nothing but a problem for him. I told him circumstances changed since we moved in, and am not in a good mental space right now. Now, he and his girlfriend are giving me the cold shoulder and being louder than ever. I do not want to let down my friend because of my mental problems and insecurity in certain things about myself, but I also do not think I can take this for 8 more months. So, am I the asshole if I move and basically force my friend to move as well? Story 24. AITA for not visiting my family as often as they'd like. Context. I 28F had my son 17 months. Recently, my dad 59 to 60 and sister 30 don't come by all that often, and I don't either. I have never missed a get-together, event, or birthday. We found out a few months ago that, during the end of my pregnancy and recovery from my C-section, I had a fractured pelvis. This had made it hard to sit in a car, let alone drive. I'm better now, but my car died about a week ago. Recently, they visited my grandmother and didn't tell me, instead choosing to say they didn't think I could make it because of my son's nap schedule. I told them that was my concern and not theirs. This caused a big argument where my dad brought up how they had been patient when I had to leave early to care for my cats. I had a diabetic cat who sadly passed away this year. While you were pregnant, I don't know what he meant, and when you had a newborn and for nap schedules. Now my son was hard as a newborn. He had infant dyschezia in which he would suddenly scream at the top of his lungs to poop. He also started teething at 2 months, and at the same time we had a soy sauce bottle explode in our kitchen at 2 a.m. This caused him to no longer sleep well, even to this day. I haven't visited much due to having been in pain, having a difficult child in car rides, not being able to drive without pain, and my dad's dog having snapped at my son. Neither my sister nor my dad want to take responsibility for the dog and ignore it when it's mentioned. I will mention they are both allergic to cats as well, which I understand and respect them coming anyways. TLDR, my family is upset I don't visit them often outside of get-togethers, events, and birthdays. Yet I've tried to explain to them why. AITA? Story 25. AITA for not letting my husband go out with his friend Christmas Day night. My husband used to go out with his high school friends Christmas Day night while they were in town. I will admit I've never liked this tradition. To me, Christmas Day is time to spend with family, not friends. The last few years, this has not even happened. Almost everybody has families and or has moved on. Today, yes, Christmas Eve, my husband announced to me that he was making plans to go out with Michael, a high school friend of his, tomorrow night. Michael only comes into town for Christmas. I was pretty upset. We are spending Christmas Day with my family, and they had made some very thoughtful accommodations for us to enable us to spend time with them late into the evening despite having young children. We had a terse conversation in which my husband said I had agreed to him doing this months ago. I had asked him how I could support his friendships, and he replied, support me seeing my friends when they are in town. He says this means Christmas Day night, and I should have known it meant Christmas Day night because he always sees them on Christmas Day night. I said he should have given me a few weeks' warning instead of springing it on me Christmas Eve. He said he does this every year, and I should have known. He also said I had not told him that our plans with my family went into the night, which is, I guess I had not been explicit. But I had told him that they were moving the party to our house after the messy stuff, after presents for dinner, so that we could play games with them while the kids were in bed, and I thought that was obvious enough. I suggested tonight, tomorrow night after 10 o'clock, or our kids' nap time window tomorrow as other compromises, but my husband says, this isn't the time we do this. Michael will want to spend that time with his family, and he's not willing to be out late as he has an early flight. We spend time together on Christmas Day night. He's agreed not to go out with his friend, but we're kind of pissed with each other now. He said he feels like I'm breaking the promise I made to him, and I'm not valuing his friendships. We're doing Christmas with his family today, and this whole thing has completely ruined the mood. We're finding little corners to fight in instead of actually enjoying the time with his family. And I don't really have anybody to talk about this with because everybody's enjoying Christmas, and I don't want to ruin their days either. So Reddit, AITA? Edit, my husband came back to me and asked if he can offer his friend Michael between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock tomorrow during our children's nap time. I have agreed to call my family up and ask, edit. My husband asked me to talk to my fam to determine exactly what times were open so that he can make plans with Michael, but am I unreasonable in not wanting to give him the evening? Edit 2, there's some other context I should have included. We had a Christmas planning meeting Saturday night to make sure everybody knew what was happening and nobody got an unpleasant surprise, because that has very much happened before. My husband did not mention his desire to go out with Michael Christmas Day evening. He only mentioned it today. So my husband and I have talked again. Apparently, when I said that my family wanted to do Christmas dinner at our house so that we could play games afterwards while the kids slept, my husband assumed I meant lunch, not supper. This is not the first time we've had a miscommunication about which meal dinner is. I still don't know why he didn't mention his desire to go out with his friend. He hasn't exactly apologized, but he has acknowledged that it is my expectation that he would mention something like that during a planning meeting. Also, I've heard you all. And you're right. We will have other opportunities to spend time with my family. I'm sure you will call me controlling for asking for some changes from his plan, but I have asked him to see if Michael can meet during the day while our kids are napping, and we're not doing family things. If Michael can't do that, he will go out with Michael right after supper for an hour or two. I have asked him to choose a place close to our house instead of their usual place near my husband's childhood home, as there will be less driving time. Ultimately, though, I'm still not okay with him telling me about his plans the day before it, and after we had already made and discussed our Christmas plans. If that makes me an asshole, so be it. I will be an asshole. My husband and I are not fighting anymore. Christmas is salvaged. I wouldn't say we have an agreement, but we have talked about discussing any Christmas tradition plans of his before Christmas Eve in the future. Edit 3. I'm glad you all are enjoying hating me. I will not be replying anymore. As the issue is resolved, I will be uninstalling Reddit for the next few days. Story 26. ITA for throwing away a slightly chocolate-covered napkin away and yelling at my parents. My family and I are 20 minutes into watching a Christmas movie, and I get up to check on the cookies in the oven and leave my hot chocolate on the table. Unfortunately, it spills. There's already a small paper towel on the table, which has a little chocolate on it. For some reason, I move it to a separate table. I then realize the chocolate from the paper towel has transferred to that table, so I decide to throw the napkin away completely and get fresh ones. As I'm doing this, the timer for the cookies goes off, adding to the chaos. Meanwhile, my mother, father, and younger sister are sitting on the couch watching everything unfold. My mother notices that I threw away the paper towel with some chocolate on it and begins lecturing me about wasting it. She suggests I could have used the napkin to clean up the mess instead. Feeling overwhelmed and distracted by everything happening at once, I explained that it was too late to use the napkin and that I would likely need additional ones anyway. I emphasize that what's important is simply cleaning up the spill, not debating over the napkin. But the argument escalates when my father joins in, agreeing with my mother. He, too, thinks that I should have kept the napkin, and now the conversation turns into a yelling match between my mother, father, and I. Frustrated, I yell at my mother, "You think everything is the end of the world." This only makes things worse, as my mother storms off to her bedroom. The tension continues, and soon my father and I are yelling at each other. At this point, my mother, still upset, begins banging on the wall from her room. When she comes out, she aggressively pushes me toward the stairs, trying to force me to go to my room. The push is hard enough that I fall down the stairs. My younger sister, witnessing the whole scene, runs off, clearly upset by what's happening. I told my mom that my sister is watching, and my mother says, "Let her watch." My mother then walks away, and I leave shaken and upset to my room. Story 27. ITA for declining to celebrate Christmas with my boyfriend's family and not inviting him to my family's celebration. For context, I'm 19F, am from the United States, and currently a second-year university student in the UK. My boyfriend, 23M, is British, recently finished his master's, and is now working. We've been dating for 10 months, and he's my first boyfriend. He's been nothing but understanding, kind, and supportive throughout our relationship. I've met his parents and siblings twice, and both times were wonderful. His mom even told him she thinks I'm the one. In late November, he asked if I'd like to spend Christmas with his family. He said everyone would love to have me there, and I thought it was sweet, but I declined. I've been feeling homesick and wanted to spend Christmas, a holiday that means a lot to me, with my family in South Dakota. When I told him, he seemed aloof for a few days. I went to his flat later to reassure him that I'd love to visit his family another time, but for me, Christmas is a family holiday. I now realize how that could have sounded dismissive. He looked hurt and asked, "Do you still love me? And aren't I your family?" I reassured him that I do love him, and things seemed fine after that. About a week later, he surprised me by showing me a flight he'd booked to South Dakota for Christmas. Flights to South Dakota are expensive, especially internationally, and while the gesture was touching, I thought it was impulsive and unwise. I told him it wasn't a good idea. For the first time, he got really upset, accusing me of not caring about him, not being serious about us, and thinking only of myself, all of which are untrue. I love him and value our relationship deeply. Knowing he was speaking out of hurt, I asked him to take a walk to cool off. When he returned, I explained that he means everything to me, but I wasn't ready for him to meet my family. To be honest, I'm nervous about how my family would react. I'm white, he's Arab, and my family in rural South Dakota is not exposed to diversity. They've made ignorant, racist comments in the past. While they'd likely be polite to his face, I fear they might say something offensive or jokingly inappropriate. They also assume Arab equals Muslim, even though he's Christian. This ignorance embarrasses me, and I don't want to put him in a situation where he might be hurt. I didn't tell him any of this, though. Instead, I said I felt it was too soon to bring someone home, as in my family, that's often a precursor to engagement, which is true. He asked if he wasn't good enough, and I reassured him that he's perfect. He then mentioned that the tickets were non-refundable. I started crying, apologizing for wasting his money, and saying how much I wanted him there, just not right now. He asked me to leave and said he needed space. I flew back home nearly a week ago, and since then we've only had brief phone conversations. He still texts me, "I love you," and "good night," but he's clearly distant and hurt. I don't know if there's anything I can do to fix this or reassure him. So, AITA? Story 28. IDA for not agreeing to foot the whole cost of a new tire on my dad's car. My 34/F dad 66/M, and I live together for financial reasons, but 2025 will be our last year living together. He takes me to and from work because I don't know how to drive, was always told not to because my ADHD and anxiety, but I'm currently studying for my permit, and then he's going to teach me, and then with half of my taxes I'm going to put a down payment on a vehicle. Anyways, so this morning I'm at work and he starts blowing up my phone saying he has a flat tire and he put the spare on, but I need to buy him a new tire when I get paid on Thursday. I said I'm not paying for the whole thing myself, especially since he's been going on all these dates with women he's meeting online, and they're often 30+ miles out of town. I'll cover half, but that's it. He said, "Okay, then you can take a Lyft to and from work, and we'll see how fast you break." I said I don't have to take one both to and from work since my shift partner passes our neighborhood on her way and has offered to take me multiple times, and I can just Lyft home. He got mad and said, "Well, I'm not helping you with anything. We'll see who breaks first. It's like a game, and I think I'll win." I called him a child for acting like that, and we haven't said anything to each other since. I normally wouldn't mind doing it, but my next check I have to pay my half of the rent, $650 plus phone bill, $121 plus cable/internet bill, $253 plus garbage bill, $81 plus groceries, at least $250 plus gas around $100 plus his Hanukkah gift, $50. And Christmas gifts for my sister and her husband, $100. He thinks because I worked overtime, I'm going to have all this money, but he doesn't seem to realize that most of it is spoken for already, and that's not even counting me not asking for him to pay me back the $100 he owes me for giving him money for all his dates. Ida? Part of me feels like I am since he does take me to and from work, even when I work nights, but I don't feel like I should have to pay for a whole new tire when I'm paying for all this other stuff. Story 29. Ida for not telling a man that the research he was mansplaining to me was my own. I don't normally post on Reddit, so please forgive me if I do this wrong. I, 33F, work in a very small, technical, specific, male-dominated field. I won't give too much information on it as I think you could easily find my identity if I did, but let's just say it's a subcategory of law. I graduated 9 years ago. For anyone wondering, the system in my country is different than in the US, so I only studied for 5 years, and am now a lawyer as well as a researcher. I publish some work here and there, but nothing too major, and no one outside of that field knows my work. Yesterday, I went to a bar with a couple of friends who introduced me to one of their friends who works in the same field as me. I was pretty excited to meet him because it's rare to meet people who work in that field. He doesn't exactly do the same thing as I do. He's not a lawyer but a legal advisor, but we work on the same topics. So naturally, we started talking about our work. At one point, we were discussing a point on which we had different opinions, so I explained mine to him, and he replied by saying that my opinion was based on nothing while his was based on the work of a professional. He guessed it, me. He basically started explaining my work to me, but in a completely wrong way, and missed all of my points. I asked him if he was sure that that was what the author meant, and he said that he was because it was pretty simple actually. For another good 20 minutes, he explained all of it to me in details, like I was a first-year law student. I didn't say anything because it was pretty funny to watch him say things that were completely wrong with so much confidence. After that, the topic changed and the night went on, But at the end of the night, right before leaving, I decided to tell him that I was actually the person that wrote the work he had quoted and that he hadn't really understood it. He reacted very badly and got angry, and he told me that I had manipulated him to humiliate him. He yelled at me for not saying it was my work at the beginning. I simply replied that he had embarrassed himself and left. I woke up this morning to text from my friend saying I was wrong for causing drama and tension and that I could have been nicer to their friend. I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong there. I mean, yes, I could have told him right away, but is it that big of a deal that I didn't? I'm not exactly sure. AITA? Edit. I forgot to make this clear, and maybe it's a bit of a misunderstanding, but both conversations happened only between the two of us. We were the only ones talking about our work, and our friends also weren't really there when I told him that I was the author. So it's not like I publicly humiliated him. The only thing embarrassing for him here is that a woman seems smarter than him, and I think that's what G had an issue with. Edit 2. I've seen some comments claiming that this post was fake because that just doesn't happen. I've seen many other stories where the same thing happens. That's not realistic. I'm not trying to justify anything because I don't really care, but I just find it funny to see lots of comments from women sharing similar stories and then lots of comments from men saying it doesn't happen. Story 30. AITA for refusing to babysit after my sister demanded I stop bringing my boyfriend to family events. I 20M have been dating my BF, Ryan 22M, for about a year. My sister, Amanda 28F, has a 4-year-old Jack. After a family barbecue last month, Amanda pulled me aside and said, "Hey, just so you know, it might be better if you don't bring Ryan to the next few family gathering." I asked her why, and she got all awkward, saying Jack's been asking questions about you and Ryan, and I don't think he's old enough to understand all that yet. I told her we weren't exactly putting on a pride parade in her yard. We were literally just eating hot dogs and chatting with family. She replied, "It's just confusing for him. You know how kids are." I was mad but kept it together and said if Ryan isn't welcome, maybe I just won't come either. She sighed and said I was being dramatic. Last week, Amanda called me, panicked, because her babysitter canceled. I told her I couldn't because Ryan and I already had plans. She begged, saying she was desperate, and I finally snapped, "Why do you want me babysitting Jack? What if I accidentally expose him to my terrifying gay lifestyle? God forbid he sees me and Ryan together." Amanda blew up. She accused me of using Jack to make a point and said, "This isn't about Ryan. It's about you being spiteful. You're punishing Jack because you're mad at me." She told my parents, and that's when real drama started. My mom called and said I was being selfish for letting a small disagreement ruin my relationship with Amanda. I told her it wasn't small and reminded her of Amanda's comment about confusing Jack. Mom brushed it off, saying, "She's just doing what's best for her child." I said, "What about what's best for me? Why do I have to hide part of my life to make her comfortable?" My dad sided with me. He said Amanda was being narrow-minded and told her, "Kids aren't confused by love, they're confused by people acting like it's something to hide." Amanda then put the drama into the fam group chat. My uncle said, "It's not homophobic to want to protect your kid from topics they're not ready for. Why push it?" This set off my cousin. She said, "If Jack's old enough to understand that Amanda and Mike are married, then he's old enough to understand Uncle Me has a boyfriend." She accused Amanda of being a hypocrite and called out my uncle too, saying, "Let's not make this about your own outdated beliefs." She also called Amanda a stuck-up bitch, and my uncle called my cousin a drama queen. My aunt chimed in on the family chat saying, "I don't agree with me lifestyle, but we should still support each other." My grandmother replied, "Support doesn't mean tolerating disrespect." Amanda's husband Mike texted me saying, "Look, I don't have an issue with you or Ryan, but this is getting out of hand. Amanda's just trying to avoid awkward questions from Jack, not insult you." I told him, "It's already insulting. Would she say the same thing if I were dating a woman?" He left me on scene. AITA?